Attention everyone. Aliens are real. The Congress of Mexico recently heard testimony about the presence of aliens on Earth. And I know what you're probably thinking. Oh, big deal. The United States also had their own weird little congressional hearings on UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon. That's what they're calling them now these days, the aliens. But the Mexican congressional hearings included a truly shocking moment in which two extraterrestrial corpses were unveiled and displayed to the Mexican Congress. And they're tiny little guys. They have 3 fingers on each hand and elongated heads. These mummified corpses were allegedly found at a diatom mine in Peru in 2017 and were believed to be over 1,000 years old. The presenter of these expired extraterrestrials was a man named Jamie Maussan. And I know what you're thinking. You're probably skeptical. Good. But what if I told you that Maussan claimed that carbon-14 dating carried out by the National Autonomous University of Mexico had determined their remains were between 700 and 1,800 years old, and that the same university had concluded that the corpses are not part of our terrestrial evolution, and that almost a third of their DNA is of unknown origin? Well, that seems pretty convincing, doesn't it? However, a physics researcher from the National Autonomous University of Mexico, who actually reviewed Maussan's test results, said that the presence of carbon-14 dating was related to brain and skin tissues from different mummies found on Earth that are of terrestrial origin, She also said that the test results, quote, do not show anything mysterious that could indicate life compounds that do not exist on Earth. Maussan even later admitted that the test results were not directly related to the 2 bodies he presented to the Mexican Congress. So what is even going on here? Who is this Jamie Maussan guy? We might ask. It's actually really hard to find information about him. I did find some. Jamie Maussan is a Mexican journalist, television personality, and ufologist, a person that studies UFOs. In 2015, Maussan was involved in an event in which what was called a mummified alien was revealed. It later turned out to be the mummified corpse of a human child. Jamie was also involved in a 2017 documentary about remains found near the Nazca lines in Peru, remains which had 3 fingers each and elongated heads. The documentary, of course, claimed that the corpses were mummified aliens. This documentary actually earned a rebuke from the World Committee on Mummy Studies, because, as you might know, there are actual human mummies from civilizations that lived in Peru, like in the past. I don't know why they jumped to aliens and didn't just think that it was just a human mummy. To parade a mummy that was once a real human and dress it up as an alien for your fake pseudo-scientific documentary does seem like a violation of human dignity, in my opinion. And also a desecration of what is presumably a valuable archaeological artifact, which isn't great. And to top it all off, do you remember that physics researcher I mentioned earlier that had reviewed Maussan's test results? Well, she's actually spoken with Maussan, and there's some interesting things that she claims he said to her. He says that he has talked to the Virgin of Guadalupe. That's one. That's pretty impressive. The physics researcher also said, quote, he told me extraterrestrials do not talk to me like they talk to him because I don't believe in them. So Maussan sounds like a pretty popular guy. Everybody wants to talk to him, even aliens and the Virgin of Guadalupe. Now, it does seem unlikely. But wouldn't it be crazy if this time at the Mexican Congress that these were actually aliens? It's possible, I think. Probably not. No, the government of Peru is actually mad at Maussan because the bodies he presented to the Mexican Congress, remember, came from Peru and are important archaeological artifacts. There's actually a large problem in Peru regarding treasure hunters stealing archaeological artifacts illegally. So a criminal complaint has actually been filed against Maussan by Peru. But I think that Maussan said that he doesn't know how the mummies got to Mexico because they aren't actually his mummies, like he had borrowed them from someone else. I don't know. The other funny thing about this, well, there's two things. One is that there were actual like serious people that testified at the Mexican Congress that were mad at Maussan because he made a big joke of the whole thing. Imagine you're like a researcher and you're concerned because there are all these reports of these unexplained flying objects, and you're concerned because you don't know what they are. They could be foreign adversaries spying on your country for all you know. And you give testimony to your Congress. And then right after, there's this guy that shows up that claims to have the bodies of aliens. And he actually takes them out and shows them to everyone. The other thing I like about this is that I like the idea that aliens are really small. Like I like the idea that maybe there could be like a realistic human-like robot. Like it looks like a normal person, but later you find out that the face actually opens up. And inside there's like a little alien going inside, pulling levers, controlling the thing. It's an interesting thought. Well, anyways, let's move on to something completely unrelated, to our next weird news story. And that is about a couple from New Zealand that is demanding a refund from Singapore Airlines after an incident they had on a 13-hour-long flight. The two passengers were surprised to see that in the seat next to them, there was a passenger with a dog. And not just any dog, a disgusting, smelly, farting dog. The woman had said that she had overheard the dog owner saying to another passenger that the dog gets nervous on airplanes, and that's why the dog needed to sit next to its owner. So if that's true, it's not like a service dog, right? The couple started hearing this snorting noise, which of course they realized was coming from the dog. The dog couldn't be in the aisle, but it was too big to be just in its owner's little space. So the head of the dog was underneath the husband's feet. And then the dog started to drool on the man. And to make matters worse, around halfway into the flight, the dog started farting. How come, this is a tangent, but how come dogs don't understand farting? Whenever you hear a dog fart, they always look around huh? They don't understand where the blast just came from. It came from your own ass. How do you not understand that? But I digress. The couple were eventually moved away from the dog, but into the back of economy, which were the only open seats. And it was also a downgrade from where they were sitting originally. The airline compensated them each $200, but I think the couple were trying to get a full refund. Well, sure, sitting next to a stinky, drooling, farting dog during a 13-hour flight is not ideal. But there is something that is worse. Air Canada, more specifically. We do have a story that involved Air Canada. Two passengers were kicked off of their flight after complaining about their seats because their seats were covered in vomit and had not been properly cleaned. The two complained to a flight attendant, but there was nothing the flight attendant could do as the plane was completely full. They couldn't move seats. Eventually, the two passengers were given blankets to cover the seats and wipes so that they could clean up the seats themselves. But there's another twist. Before taking off, the pilot of the plane came back to the two passengers and kicked them off of the flight for being rude to the flight attendant. He said they could either leave willingly or be escorted out by a security and placed on the no-fly list. Now, this account came from a post on Facebook, so perhaps not the most reliable source. But Air Canada has released an apology to the passengers, and I believe the Public Health Agency of Canada is investigating the incident. So this incident definitely happened in some capacity. Maybe some of the details might not be correct. But that is unbelievable to be kicked off of your flight after complaining that there's vomit on your seats. Pretty typical Air Canada experience. Sure, having to sit in disgusting, unsanitary, vomit-stained, what? Let me try again. Sure, having to sit in disgusting, unsanitary, vomit-stained plane seats are bad. What happened in the last story is bad, okay? But consider a recent Delta Airlines flight meant to go from Atlanta, Georgia to Spain, in which a passenger had what can best be described as an onboard medical emergency. This woman had a horrible case of diarrhea. The details are a little obscure to me, but what I figure must have happened is that she had an accident while trying to get to the bathroom, because the article I read describes a trail of diarrhea down the aisle throughout the entire plane. The incident was so bad that the plane was forced to turn around. They were 2 hours into an 8-hour-long flight, and it took 5 hours to clean the plane, which included replacing the carpet of the airplane. This reminds me of an incident from last June in which a passenger on board an Air France flight found his seat's footwell still wet with a previous passenger's blood and diarrhea. Why does this keep happening? I'm afraid of flying, not because of like the extreme height, because I'm afraid of all the disgusting germs everywhere. There's like countless stories like this that are just like make me uncomfortable just reading them. Let's move on from plane news, I think, because frankly, I'm getting a little grossed out. There's a fancy hotel in Chester, England, that had 2 ponds full of expensive koi fish. The key word being had. The hotel had noticed that some of its expensive koi fish had started going missing. And so the hotel had put up cameras in order to try to find the koi fish fiend, and found that the person, or rather thing, that was stealing their fancy fish was an otter. An otter was videoed evading the electric fence put up to protect the koi fish from herons, and was filmed snatching a koi fish before escaping. So how much damage could this otter have done, is what you're probably thinking. Each koi fish cost 2,000 British pounds times 50 koi fish that this otter stole equals 100,000 pounds. I was looking at the price of koi fish, and according to some websites I found, koi fish can sell in between $10 to over $50,000 for a champion level quality. I've never thought about the fact that there are some koi fish that are considered champion koi fish, but I guess it makes sense. I do think it's a little bit of a surprise that the value of one koi fish can surpass what the median American makes in a year, especially when there are otters that exist that want to eat all of your koi. I wanted to look up what the most expensive koi fish ever sold was, and I found a website that said that there was a koi fish once sold for $1.8 million. That is expensive. In other otter news, last month there was a woman named Jen Royce who was inner tubing down the Jefferson River in Montana with 2 of her friends, when all of a sudden a river otter came up behind one of them and they were attacked. Royce said, and I quote, "I didn't even get a chance to get the words, 'There's an otter behind you,' out of me before it attacked her." They described the otter as vicious and relentless, which attacked for about 5 minutes, managing to bite Royce's face, arms, ears, hands, legs, and ankle. The 3 managed to make it to shore, and the otter swam off. But Royce was badly injured by then. They managed to call 911, but it was hard for emergency responders to locate the woman because they were in such a remote location. But eventually the women were eventually able to be rescued. But by then, Royce was struggling to stay awake because she thought if she fell asleep, she would die. I have a quote from her. "Without any exaggeration, God's honest truth, I did not think I was going to make it out of that river." Oh, come on. It was a river otter. How bad could it have been? Oh, yeah, that looks pretty bad. This reminds me of a while back. That there was that otter, that sea otter off the coast of California that was stealing people's surfboards and biting off chunks with his teeth. What is going on with otters? I didn't realize otters were so mischievous. Don't mess around with otters, I guess. I mean, they seem pretty unassuming, but they can almost kill you, apparently. And for our last story, everybody knows that I like to end with a really good story, and this week's no different. The city of Wichita, Kansas, was recently plagued by a mysterious odor that has been described as burning oil, tires, or rubber. It wasn't present in all of Wichita, but it seems parts of Wichita definitely smelled. It was so strong, it burnt my nose Sunday morning at Lincoln in Washington, a resident said. It literally made me gag. Oh my God. I don't know if Wichita still smells bad as of the filming of this video. I do know that it did smell bad for at least a few days about a week ago, based off the articles I read. But this led me to look at what other cities smell bad. And my conclusion is that every city smells bad, at least at some point. If you Google, why does insert any city smell bad, you'll probably get a bunch of results. I was also looking at articles that listed the worst smelling cities. And I did notice a bunch of cities kept on showing up over and over again. New York City, New Orleans, San Francisco, Bangkok, Beijing, Venice, Italy, Philadelphia, Mumbai, New Delhi, Paris, and Los Angeles are all smelly from what I've heard. I've never been to any of those cities, so I can't confirm. But it does kind of make sense. A whole bunch of big polluted cities probably smell bad. That's intuitive to me. But what is surprising? The city of Tacoma, Washington has a smell so bad that it has its own Wikipedia page, the aroma of Tacoma. Some parts of Tacoma, the Tacoma tide flats, frequently smell similar to rotten eggs. But why? Why does Tacoma smell so bad? There are some ideas. It could be the pulp and paper mill, the rendering plant, or the oil refinery. Actually, I think we've solved it. I think it is one of those three. I found out that the term aroma of Tacoma has been used since at least the 1940s, though. That is one interesting thing. Tacoma has smelled for the past 80 years, essentially. Really bad. The story also reminded me of something else. The Great Stink, it's called. In central London, in August of 1858, the hot weather combined with sewage that at the time was pumped untreated directly into the Thames caused it to smell very bad in London. It also caused several outbreaks of cholera because they were, in fact, pumping raw sewage into the river. It caused officials of London to consider not dumping raw sewage directly into the banks of the Thames. What I'm saying is, it could be worse, probably. Well, that's all I have for this week. Thanks. Thank you.